Today we are welcoming Rachel Lundberg to the show today. I'm very excited about this. She talks about so many things about nervous system regulation, and nervous system regulation is such an important topic. We've discussed it a few times on the show, but have somebody who really knows about the nervous system and all the tools that go into it. She also teaches yoga and everything that goes into that. And the main thing about this episode you're going to learn today is really how to self-regulate. Self-regulation in our lives is really about maintaining a state of balance so we can actually live the life that we want. So many of us are dysregulated, and until we take control of our inner state, we can't really maintain the life that we want. So I'm very excited to have her on and share her insights with us. How are you today?
Thank you, Anthony. I'm excited to be here. And of course, this is a topic I'm passionate about. So looking
Absolutely.
forward to
So
it.
I'm very interested to hear your story and how you got into wellness and nervous system regulation and how you're helping people today.
Okay, well, it's a long story, but I'll do a shortened version. So basically, I fell into chronic illness in my late 20s, after the birth of my third child. And I spent a decade searching for answers of how to heal myself or fix myself. Um, Simultaneously, during that period of time, I became a certified yoga instructor, and that has definitely been a significant part of my healing journey. And about 10, 11, maybe 12 years into the difficulties that I was dealing with, I was introduced to nervous system regulation, and it was through the tools that I learned in my healing journey that I was able to heal from chronic illness, um, ultimately make some significant shifts and changes in my personal life and in my outlook on life. That has really led me to where I'm at today, where I'm teaching people these skills in addition to practicing them myself, and bringing them into the yoga practice. The yoga practice is already built into our yoga practice typically, but bringing light to the fact that this is something that we are actually addressing when we are practicing yoga is nervous system regulation. And then in very practical and scientific ways, I assist people in understanding how this system works so that we can become masters at regulating ourselves enough to, well, really get in tune with the higher self and connect with the wisdom of the unchanging self.
Very good. Appreciate you sharing that. So, can you describe what nervous system regulation is? Because some people may not know, and especially like how to get into it. So, if you can define that, that would be awesome.
Well, it's an exciting time because when I was first introduced to it, it felt like it was a very, very new topic. And this was about in 2017. Um, since then, and maybe it's because it's the world that I'm in, it feels like it's just absolutely exploded. Everybody's talking about the fight or flight response, the importance of not getting stuck in the fight or flight response. So when you hear anyone talking about fight or flight response or rest and digest, they're talking about the ways that the nervous system works. Um, we have the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system in its most basic forms, if that's how we're going to explore it. The parasympathetic nervous system is the one that's equated with resting and digesting. So it's when our body doesn't feel an imminent threat, and it can rest, repair, connect. It's typically the preferred state of being for most of us. It's kind of where we all want to be living. Um, and then there's the sympathetic part of the nervous system, and that's this part of our nervous system that calls us to action, that is gives us the chemicals and the information that we need to take action of some sort. Um, and so there's a lot of talk about being stuck in being stuck in sympathetic nervous system, meaning like reactive, ready to fight, flight, or flee, or freeze, I guess is the word I want to say. But sometimes we can get stuck on the other one too, where we are just completely shut down and unable to interact in life. So when we're balancing our nervous system, we're regulating our nervous system, we're looking for a fluid dance between these two parts. They're very important parts of our nervous system. So I feel like there's been a little bit of a demonizing of the sympathetic nervous system, like we never want to be in that state. But the truth is every time we take an inhalation, it activates the sympathetic nervous system. Think of an inhalation as an action, the exhalation as the release. And you'll hear that a lot, like in meditation or in yoga. A lot of times we'll inhale as we're preparing for movement, the exhalation, the breath moving out. So we need both. We have to have both, and it's just a matter of understanding them and when best to use the significant tools that each has.
Awesome. I like how you mentioned that because it is like a dance in a sense. It's not like one is bad. We need both. It's just that
Mhm.
when people are in the chronic stress state or the sympathetic, that's when things start to come arise. Is that right?
Absolutely. We seem to have a lot more understanding, or I guess publicly, there's a lot more information out there about that being stuck in that heightened state of arousal. So the sympathetic nervous system is the more aroused part of the nervous system. So being stuck in that, it releases chemicals in the body that do lead to stress-related diseases and chronic issues. So anytime there's I don't want to make a complete and total blanket statement, but most of the time when there's anything chronic happening in someone's body, it's linked to nervous system dysregulation.
That makes sense. And to my understanding, that's the autonomic nervous system, right? Those two branches that you mentioned. And then we have like the peripheral nervous system, which is like the spine and like the brain and all that. So it's kind of like all these nervous systems that kind of act in synergy in a sense. But when it comes to nervous,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Mhm.
for sure. So the regulation tools, in terms of self-regulation, like what do you recommend for people if they're so dysregulated? Like how can they become aware of that and actually get started on that process?
So I like to make things incredibly simple and incredibly accessible, because when we get too detail oriented or too scientific or too woo woo, then a lot of people get lost in that, and understandably so. Um, that said, one of the really powerful check-in points to see how you're doing in your body is to see how tense your jaws are. So you could just place your fingers right on the place where the upper and lower jaw meet, and just notice if you are clenched in that area. You don't have to put your hands on your body, although I powerfully believe that hands on body is a significant tool that we underuse consciously, in a conscious way, I guess I should say. But if you can just tune into maybe some tightness in your jaw, that's an indication that there's a little bit of amped up energy, amped up nervous system going on, and maybe unnecessarily. We tend to hold a lot of tension in the jaws, which leads to tension in the neck and shoulders, and then in the rest of the body. Um, if you notice that your jaws are tight and that you're clenching your jaws, just a simple opening and closing of your mouth a few times and or exhaling through your mouth will help to release tension in the jaws. And if you can do it a couple of times, you will probably notice that your whole body starts to feel like it's softening. And when we can feel that our body is softening just a little bit, we are moving in the direction of balancing our nervous system a bit more.
Awesome. So it sounds like awareness because a lot of us we carry around this tightness, this stress, and we don't even know it, and we don't realize how it's actually affecting our day-to-day lives. So I think that's a great idea to like become aware of the tension and then start to do some things to release it in a sense. I'm sure like it's a totally different way of being like when you're stressed and then when you're not, but it's so like ingrained in who we are in a sense, so it's kind of hard to become aware of that. Am I right on that?
Absolutely. We live in a body that's been conditioned either societally and also by our own minds and our own belief systems, to exist not only in our behavioral patterns, but also our body holding patterns. Our bodies are incredibly wise, and our bodies do reflect our inner world. So if we are holding a lot of tension in the body, there's a good chance that we're holding a lot of tension in the mind, and emotional tension and mental tension. And so when it's kind of like pick your path of entrance. There in the nervous system regulation, they talk about the top-down method and the bottom-up method. The top-down method being thinking and recognizing, from the brain perspective to regulate your nervous system. So top down. Bottom up is body, getting in your body, feeling your body to then change and shift the mind. They not one is not better than the other. It's kind of like pick your entry point. Which one resonates for you most? Um, and so, for example, I might notice in my mind that I'm having racing thoughts. Okay. And so that would be a racing thoughts would be an indication that I'm dysregulated. Okay. So, across the board, no matter whether you're going top down or bottom up, the best like middle ground area to enter in, the most, I would say, most researched, most proven successful, is going to sound very cliche to a lot of people, but it's your breath, the way that you're breathing. I cannot um, underscore, or what's the word I'm looking for? I will say we should and could be giving the breath so much more of the spotlight because it truly is the pathway and one of the most powerful pathways to regulating your nervous system. Um, so just simply noticing your inhalation and your exhalation. People that are stuck in that heightened state typically have short, shallow in breaths and short, shallow out breaths as well. So it's a very short, shortened breath. Um, and even if you can just elongate that a tiny, tiny bit, specifically the exhalation, you'll start to also notice a shift in the way that your body is reacting.
That's a great point. The breath is so powerful. And as soon as we start to become aware of that, it's kind of like our mind becomes more silent in a sense because we're so distracted by things. But if we actually become aware of our breath and our own breathing, it's like something to focus on. And it also helps regulate it in a sense.
Absolutely. And there's some super simple ways to do this. One of the ones that I first started with when I was having a hard time with system regulation was just when I would, if I would try to sit in meditation, it was very difficult for me because I've had so much anxiety and so much adrenaline pumping through my body. It was very difficult to sit still. Um, so my mind needed something to do so that my body could relax. And so what I was taught to do was on my inhalation to count one, on my exhalation to count two, all the way to 10, and then start over again. And if at any point along the way I lost count, just to start again at one. So it was super simple. I was just inhaling, counting one in my mind, exhaling, counting two, inhaling three, and you can imagine it, right? Going all the way up to 10. What that does is it gives the mind something to focus on, which is going to take you out of those racing thoughts or those catastrophic thoughts, um, the belief systems, the patterns that you're typically in, and it gives you the what I consider to be the magic, which is pause. It's space. The breath and giving our mind something to do gives spaciousness to for the wise self to come in and guide us, give us inspiration to allow us to see more love, beauty, joy, harmony in the world and in ourselves.
I really like that because that space is really where it has the wisdom, as you said. Like the silence has the answers, and we're so like stressed out. And if we just kind of give ourselves a space to relax, a lot of times we have to create that space because we live in a world of distractions, and a lot of times we can't control the outside circumstances. But if we can actually start to regulate ourselves with all these tools, we actually create space. And then that gives us room to actually think about higher level things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you're having a hard time in your physical body, one thing, and or even noticing, I think originally you kind of had asked me, can we tell that we're in these heightened states of arousal? One way you can do it is just train yourself to understand what it feels like to be tight in your body and then to let it go. So when I'm teaching a yoga class, what I'll often have people do is I'll have them lie on the ground with their feet pressed against the wall. Okay. And I'll have them just really like imagine that their whole muscular system is hugging in. So there's progressive relaxation is called, but like in order to get there, you've got to tighten everything up. So you could even make fists with you take your hands into fists, tighten your body as much as you can, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, hold it, and then let it go. And that is a really great way to start to bring higher awareness to what it feels like to be tense in the body and what it feels like to let it go. Because I think the concept of letting go, relaxing, calm down, those just create more stress in the mind. It's like, well, what I have to figure it out. I have to figure it out. But what we're trying to do, or what we're accomplishing here, is awareness and embodiment. So being in our bodies, allowing ourselves to feel what it feels like to be really tense. Maybe not because we're in a tense situation, but because we're creating tension. And you can really tighten yourself up, make it really tight, hold it, and then let it go. And practicing that alone will help you notice, like when you're sitting at a stoplight, if you were to check in, you could kind of gauge on that really tight state of being, where am I at in the really tight state of being as opposed to that released and relaxed state of being. So that's
I really
another
like
very
that
practical and embodied way to become aware of how our bodies are living in this space.
for sure. I like that. Keep it simple, right? Because I think it's also important to take advantage of the time in our day where we may not be doing anything, right? So if we have a time to be mindful, don't just be on your phone and distract yourself. Actually take time to self-regulate or kind of get your mind right or kind of focus on your next task in a sense and actually be present. So I think that really helps you make effective decisions throughout the day.
Yeah, I love that. And it can be hard to do because we don't always realize that we're in a space of time that we're not necessarily doing anything. Um, for example, one of my favorite places of space of time where we're not totally doing something is driving. Yes, we are doing something and we need to be present and aware, but we're also not, but because we have to kind of be in this space and we are so conditioned to know how to drive, what the next move is, we'll float away in our brains into thinking, problem solving, catastrophizing, fantasizing, whatever it might be. That is a powerful time for us to practice presence and mindfulness, to speak into existence ways of being that we choose. So um, I found in my healing journey that driving in my car was one of the times when my brain was most under attack by fears, anxieties, um, obsessing over health or whatever might be going on. So I made an active choice to start carrying around words with me that I would of concepts and qualities that I would speak out loud about while I was driving in my car. So now you can speak out loud in your car. Nobody thinks you're crazy because everybody knows that you're talking on your phone or whatever. Um, but you could just be talking about the concept of compassion while you're driving. I think talking out loud is really powerful because when we're silent, sometimes those of us that are really in our heads, that silence just creates a space for a lot more of inner catastrophizing, obsessing, etc. to happen. Whereas when we start to speak out loud, our brain's like, wait a minute, someone's talking and it's the most important person on the planet. It's me that's talking. So I'm going to listen. The brain's like, I'm going to listen to this. And so it's actually, proven that our brain listens most to our own voice. So I can take that time, kind of this like blank time that I can't escape from because I've got to drive somewhere, I've got to be somewhere, and use it proactively. Okay, I'm going to cultivate words of compassion. I'm going to pull from my past and talk out loud about ways I've seen and experienced compassion. I'm going to notice today, or I'm going to talk in my car about how somebody was compassionate in the grocery store. So Does that make sense? I mean, it's just simple ways. We think it has to be super complicated. It has to be medicated, and there's lots of ways that we can help the nervous system regulate. Um, but the use of our own voice and proactively choosing to nourish the garden that we're living um, in these space times. Getting ready for the day is another time when the mind kind of goes awry and gets stuck in different patterns. The driving in our car, anything that you kind of do on autopilot is a great time for your brain to go into catastrophizing or going into depressive states or whatever like that. So noticing those autopilot times of the day and being proactive about bringing in conscious choice into that space. What energy am I going to bring into this typically autopilot situation? Then you start to really master, become a master of your attention and at the end of the day, of what you're creating, the reality that you're creating for yourself.
I love that. Really becoming mindful and setting guard of the door of our mind because there's so many things that can be influencing our mind in a negative way, right? But if we can actually retrain our mind and actually be more positive and kind of focus on our goals in a sense, and opposed to the tragic outcomes that usually never happen, right? It's just usually these
Hmm.
things we create in our mind due to past experiences or just kind of being in a stress state all the time. So if we can retrain our mind and our bodies to kind of be in a state of joy so we can actually create things that we want, I think that's key.
It is key. And one thing too that really was pivotal for me was when I started to understand neuroplasticity. And this might be a new word for some people out there. But basically, the truth of the matter is that our brains are malleable from the day that we're born till the day that we die. And they're repatterning themselves all the time. They're creating new neural pathways. Our brains do not stop changing and shifting. Our thought patterns, our belief systems. Um, so most of our lives, this is pretty much anyone on the planet, we have been living from a conditioned mind state, from societally, religiously, school systems, trauma, families have conditioned us into a certain state of being. And when we can just notice that that's part of the human experience and appreciate the fact that it kind of has to be that way to start because we need to learn how to survive in community. But there comes a point in everyone's life, whether it's sooner or later, where something drives you to ask if is all of that even really true? Do I actually want to operate that way in my life? Is that the path that I choose, or was that the path that was given to me that I just adopted because that was what I would thought I was supposed to do? And so if you find yourself at a point where you're starting to ask those kinds of questions, then you are tapping into the power of neuroplasticity from the viewpoint of being the creator instead of the one being molded, if that makes sense. So I like to think of the brain as like a piece of clay it's been molded by all kinds of different things, like what you're watching on TV, who you're talking with, who you've hung out, like all the things that you've experienced in your life have created this sculpture of your mind that is working on autopilot all the time. And when we notice that, neuroplasticity teaches us that and when I say we, I'm talking about our higher, wiser self, we can consciously become the sculptor of the way that we choose our mind to be formed moving forward. And that doesn't mean that we obliterate all of our experiences. No, how can we take what's already been shaped and make it into our very own masterpiece? So becoming a conscious chooser, a conscious, moving more into the woo-woo language is a conscious co-creator, but conscious co-creation is basically saying, I understand neuroplasticity and I'm going to take charge now in any way that I consciously can, in any way that I'm aware of. I am going to make choices that build neural pathways that support my value system and my relationships and my self talk and my job. And, so we're we are that powerful only when we choose it. Otherwise, if we're not choosing to be the sculptor, then we are being sculpted.
I love that. Becoming aware of our conditioning is so key because, as you said, we kind of live this life that isn't really ours in a sense. Like we come up with these things and they may or may not be in alignment with our best interest, right? And until we really come in touch with who we are, our values, our standards, our purpose, and all these things, and have our own sense of direction, we're just kind of be stuck in the matrix in a sense.
We are all stuck in, some people call it, your hypnotic state. Like, which hypnotic state are you in? And I think of so many iterations of my life, or hypnotic states, or matrices that I have been a part of that I thought were absolutely true. And until I realized that they weren't true. And so we end up shifting into bandwidths of truth. Um, Layers of truth that, just think about how we've progressed as a human, as humankind, and what we understand now about whether the earth is flat or round. I mean, at one point it was believed, the belief was that it was absolutely flat, and it would have blown your mind to think otherwise. So we are consistently, constantly evolving and changing as individuals and as humanity. So we want to leave space for things to not be true anymore. And for us to become more and more connected to deeper truths, truths that have a capital T instead of a little t. Um, And if you start to study, philosophies and science and things across the world, I throw science in there because I personally, this is Rachel's opinion, feel that neuroplasticity and spirituality that's kind of the meeting point. Neuroplasticity is where spirituality and science are starting to really meet. Again, I'll say, because I think that they've met before, but in our lifetime, this is where the two of them are meeting again, and allowing us to use these very analytical minds that we've developed to understand deeper spiritual concepts that have been that have been used and practiced and taught across time. I feel like I got a little bit on a tangent there. but but um we can step out of that matrix at any time. If you feel like that's impossible, I invite you to imagine what it's like to bite into a lemon. So if you close your eyes for a second and you imagine what it's like to bite into a lemon, tell me, what is that experience like for you, Anthony?
Personally, it's like I'm kind of in a state of relaxation. It's kind of like tasting a lemon in a sense. Uh,
So you don't feel the bitterness, you don't feel your cheeks pucker up, and like
well,
you're
yeah,
biting
it's
into,
definitely sour, but I'm
yeah.
just kind of in the moment.
So the point in trying to illustrate here, and we could use a different one if lemon didn't land, but basically, like, with our minds alone, we have the capacity to travel to all different kinds of experiences.
Yeah,
Um, we can just imagine what it's like to bite a lemon, and our body will release saliva into the mouth, and we might have a physical reaction to that. And so that is proof to you that you can travel and create a different reality for yourself,
yeah. I
that
really
you're
like
that
that.
powerful.
Something I've been doing a lot is like contemplating the mission in a sense. Like we talked about having these white spaces or kind of like spaces of silence. And I'll just kind of like ask myself, how can I serve to a higher capacity, right? How can I improve my messaging? How can I kind of respond differently in this situation? Kind of like foresee challenges that are going to come up. And when they do happen, you kind of like slow down the time in a sense because you've already seen it.
Yes, beautiful. Yeah, using the practice of self-reflection,
Yeah.
um, as a tool for priming yourself for future interaction. um, is so powerful. That was one of the really powerful tools that I was taught to use in my healing from my health challenges was to create scenarios in which I could feel, see, and myself as well, like whole, complete, healthy, and so we can practice these states of being, even if it feels like forced or foreign. We can start practicing these ways of being until we become these ways of being. It's how we got where we're at right now. We've been practicing the way that of being so that we are the way that we are. What if we proactively practiced how we choose to be in the world in through visualization, but also in the visualization using as much of the sensory system as you can, because the sensory system really helps the brain make stronger neural pathways. So using the senses, using emotion, specifically the emotional states that you would like to be experiencing more of, practicing them, imagining yourself in these states, recording yourself speaking these states out loud and listening to it in the car. These are things that we can do that are assisting the shift.
Yeah, so really training nervous system, and it sounds like you want to incorporate more than just one thing. So taking actions on these things, but being mindful in that process. So incorporating your mind, your body, and your spirit, like really feeling it. Like don't be doing a practice and have your mind somewhere else. It's not like you won't get any benefits, just you're not going to get all of them, I feel.
Well, and one thing that really helped me, and I teach this to my students in my Calm program. So I have a 6 weeks to Calm program where I teach these nervous system regulation hacks, or I don't even want to call them hacks, but patterns and habits that you can form to really rewire your life. But I talk about the principle of FAR. So it's an acronym, FAR, and it's the three principles of neuroplasticity. And so if you're listening to this, write it down, make a note of it. The first principle is focus. The second one is associations, and I'll talk about each of them here in a second. And the third one is repetition. So those are the three ingredients you need to rewire your brain. Um, so whatever it is that you're focusing on, you will create more neural pathways around. And if you're focusing on something and you add in an association of some kind, meaning an emotional state or a sensory experience to whatever it is you're focusing on, that solidifies it even more as a neural pathway. And then if you repeat it over and over and over again, you basically create a very effective neural pathway. And this neural pathway that you're creating is non-biased. It doesn't care if you think it's a good pathway or a bad pathway or a helpful one or a non-helpful one. It's completely neutral. It's basically just like, Anthony, whatever you're focusing on and you're creating associations with and repeating, I'm going to create that neural pathway for you. And I'm going to do it consistently across the board, whether you think it's good, bad, right, or wrong. So if we can so for example, let's say um, I would like to cultivate more appreciation in my life. So I would focus on appreciation. I would look for examples of appreciation to give my mind evidence. I
That makes a
might
lot of sense.
write some things down on a piece of paper. I might put pictures up on my wall. I might listen to affirmations or speak them out loud around appreciation. But I can't stop there. I've got to, if I really want to deepen this into my nervous system, into my neural pathways, I'm going to want to create associations with it. What experiences have I had of appreciation? What does appreciation feel like in my body? What does it taste like, smell like? If it had a color, if it had a smell, you can really amplify this. So now you're creating an embodied experience of appreciation more fully, and you repeat it. And you repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, repeat it. Your brain has no choice This is very, very reassuring. It was for me. Maybe you'll find it reassuring as well. But your brain has no choice but to change when you follow those three things. It's already doing it in ways that you're probably not even aware of. So it's like, okay, if you want to be the one that drives the car, this is how the car works. Focus, associations, repetition. What do you want for your life? What reality do you want to be living in? What matrix do you want to be playing in? Focus, associations, repetition.
Yeah, I love that. Something I kind of relate to that, something I talk about kind of frequently is taking a cold shower, right? Now, when you first start this, a lot of people, we just kind of, from what I hear, they just kind of do it in a scattered state. They just kind of do it because it's, oh, it's good. I mean, I think it's great for nervous system regulation and being able to stay calm under pressure. But what I like to talk about is how to approach the cold, right? Because you can do it in a state of mindfulness and kind of be in the eye of the tornado in a sense. And you can focus on your mission, your purpose. Because what you're doing is you're entraining your nervous system. So when you actually go under stress in a real situation, you actually have this learning in your nervous system. You actually know how to handle it in a sense. But if
Mhm.
you go in there, you're still going to get some benefits. But if you're like, if you're kind of like, I don't know, scared or timid in a sense, and you're not controlling your breath, you're almost kind of in training your nervous system to do that under pressure. So you got to be mindful
Mhm.
of what you do. It's not just what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah, that's powerful. And what a great way, it's because that's multisensory, right? Because we've got the cold shower, we've got the intention, you've got the things that you're talking to yourself about, the choices that you're actively making in that moment. And absolutely 100%, you are going to condition yourself to be able to handle that situation.
Yeah.
So
Another
my
thing,
my invitation is conditioning ourselves instead of being conditioned.
yeah, for sure. So aligned yoga is something you talk about. Do you want to define that and how it's been beneficial for your clients and how it's helped you in your own life?
Absolutely. So if I talk about it on a very surface level, it's incredibly important, but it's kind of like it builds a foundation. So when we're working with the body, we want to understand the machinery that we're working with. And, this takes me into a whole nother topic, but across the board, oftentimes yoga teachers just aren't taught enough about how the actual mechanics of the body work and the joints are meant to move and how to align them properly, so that people can stay safe and have a sustainable practice. So on a very foundational level, like if somebody comes into one of my teacher training programs, they're going to learn how to align the body properly and how to teach postures so that they're aligned so that more people can practice with less injury. Now, that's the foundational part of alignment-based yoga. From there, we start to you can either think of it as building up or deepening down. I think it's happening both, right? We're building up and deepening down. And it's about, am I aligned in my life? Am I living through the lens of the conditioned self? Or, what if what I really love is fill in the blank? And what if what brings me joy and harmony in my life is fill in the blank? How can I align more fully with that? Because the more aligned we are with our true sense of self, our true self, our wise self, the more harmonious our life will be. Still might be in the midst of a cold and brutal shower, but we have made active choices about how we're going to show up to that situation and how we're going to navigate it, and trusting that ultimately at the end of the day, it's a wiser, deeper, broader part of us that's guiding the ship, and not the fearful conditioned self that maybe we've been living in. So I invite people to their own personal alignment. What does that look like for you? It's going to be different for you than for me. The principles of it, the concepts of it might be the same: kind, loving, harmonious. These are words that I think are universal truths of ways of being when we know we're in alignment. But what that looks like for you, teaching about cold showers, for me, is teaching nervous system regulation through my own experience and lens. So as people go through my programs, whether it's, simply just nervous system regulation, not just because that's incredibly powerful, or they're coming through to become a teacher, um, my goal is the same. My message, I should say, is the same. It's like, what is your path of alignment? And how can you more fully inhabit that path with the fullness of you? And it makes our world so beautiful when we are connecting with other beings who are fully inhabiting their own space, their own expression, instead of, a bunch of robots just mimicking each other. So,
NPCs, right?
right?
Non-plague.
So, so, you, yeah, and then my hope is that over time, as more and more people do this through whatever pathway speaks to them, that ultimately we can, and I do believe ultimately we will shift the world, um, by allowing ourselves to be more authentic and more in alignment with our true self.
Yeah, I really like that. Staying in alignment, right? So we can actually be the light and the model for others around us and strengthen that sense of purpose as well. Because it's not like we're not going to have challenges and things like that. We're going to have these things that come up. But as long as we like strengthen the sense of self with all these practices and contemplation, all that, it's like a lot harder to get knocked off and it'll happen a lot less frequently as well. And
Yeah.
it's not like you're just totally derailed because you have a mission, you know who you are, and all these things, and you kind of dance with it in a sense. It's like you kind of alchemize the challenges into success.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love it anytime anyone uses the word dance, because I think I have a passion for dance, but I also believe that we are all in this big humanity or human dance, I guess I should say. Obviously, it's not just humans. We are dancing with technology, we're dancing with nature, and it's all part of the whole. It's all of it's a part of it. And how can we get more comfortable with um, with the parts of us that want to push away and push out the other? Um, and we can do that much more with a lot more success when we feel aligned and connected with our true essence, our heart space, our why self, however you want to say it, God, you know, um, something that's grander than, again, than that conditioned self.
Yeah. It's being connected to a higher power in a sense. That's what the truth is. Like I said, truth is the highest form of frequency. And I feel like standing for what is real, standing for the truth, that is a very important part of your health. Because you can have these negative beliefs and all these things like that. And I feel it's going to affect your vibration in some way, shape, or form. So really becoming aware of these things so we can transform them to be in alignment with our goals and be of service. And doing that inner work, that's where it's really at.
Yeah, and I think if we were to just narrow it down to one concept, just to simplify it across the board, is is what I'm choosing bringing me closer to love or further away from love? And I'm not talking about romantic love, and I'm not talking about self-sacrificing love, but love without conditions, in the sense that, is what I'm doing creating, another way to think about it, separation from myself, from my connection to the cosmos, to the universe, to God? Or is it making me contract away? Um, and that might be a helpful place for people to explore as well.
For sure. How do we start to develop inner wisdom in a sense? Because we talked about it a lot, but really kind of cultivating the inner light and kind of shining that on the world and being of service and developing our gifts and all that. Because there's a lot of dark times, dark places, but if we can actually kind of be the light and be the change, I feel like the most powerful thing we can do.
It is the most powerful thing we can do, because you spoke of the word frequency earlier, but we are all emitting a frequency. Electromagnetic field, you can look at it in different ways. frequency is often, associated with the woo-woo world, but it's true that we are sending out a signal. And so how do we deepen into our wisdom? How do we cultivate that? You know, I think it's important. It could be really helpful for someone to sit down and just say, what do I believe are universal truths? Like if I were to remove all religion, all schooling, all, opinions off of the planet, what can't be removed? What would still remain? And and this will be unique to each individual. But if we were to remove, the schooling and the society, the government, and the religions and things like that, I believe what would be left would be the core principles of love. Um, I should say the core principle of love, and from that core principle of love comes the qualities of compassion and appreciation and joy and harmony and peace and kindness, lightness. And there's different schools of thought that have kind of put these into core words. Sylvie Olivier is one of my mentors, and she's put it into the 12 qualities of plenitude, 9 qualities of the heart, and the 3 spheres. So if that's something when you're listening that piques your interest, you can check that out, Golden Heart Wisdom. Um, Also in the internal family systems work of psychology, you can find, I think it's 8 core words. I think they all start with the letter C, and I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. But you can start looking at some of these thought spaces and notice that where they coincide, like where they collide, where they meet up, and it's typically some version, some form of love. Any religion, and pretty much any philosophy, obviously, there's a lot of the opposite happening as well, but so if that is the core, if we could agree, or if you can agree within yourself that that's the core, then if you connect to that, there's no way you won't be connecting to wisdom, because that's where wisdom lives. In a very practical way, cultivating wisdom is, in my one of the practices I teach people, is just to put your hand on your heart, close your eyes for a moment. Imagine it's your heart that's breathing or breathing down into your heart. And for whatever reason, I feel like that hand on body connection and hand on heart is going to immediately assist you in bringing your awareness from your thinking based self into your heart based self. Heart based self is our wise self.
Yeah.
So that's how we can start to connect with our inner wisdom. The wisdom's already there. Um, it's just a matter of choosing to connect.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen through your brain. Unfortunately, you're not going to think your way. Ultimately, the heart assists the brain, and that would maybe be a topic for another time. Um, but just starting with something as simple as heart-based breathing is
For
going to
sure.
connect you with your wise self.
Yeah, we can operate out of a place of fear or a place of love, right? And I feel like it's not that fear is bad. We can use it as a tool in a sense. Like I feel like it's important to know fear, like KNOW, like understand our tendencies,
Hmm.
our proclivities, so we can actually work around it and use it as a tool. But operating from that base foundation of love is so important, and that's really going to determine our choices at the end of the day. Like whether we make choices out of fear or love, it's really going to determine our actions, which are going to determine our outcomes and kind of life that we lead essentially.
Absolutely. And if we believe that everything stems from love, then fear also would stem from that.
Mm,
Um, so it's a distortion of fear or of love, but it's still, if love is the source, then we might be able to get to a point where we can see that at the source of all beings and the source of all things, all even all the things that we don't like, that at the source of that thing is the seed of love. And that seed of love has gone through multiple distortions, conditioning systems, traumas, societal, generational. But if we were to really pare it down and we were to say, okay, I see you, I have compassion, I can feel that, yes, you too, and yes, this even stems from love. We give those distortions permission to return to source. This is in our outer world, but especially in our inner world, when we're meeting those parts of ourselves that we don't like, that we want to ostracize. Those parts originated from a seed of love, because if everything comes from love, then we have to believe that also the things we don't like have stemmed from love. It's like love is the soil, and it might grow beautiful flowers that we really like, but it's also going to grow weeds. And uh and then this empowers us again about choice, but then we can start to look at the world with more compassion, and it's not so scary. And we can meet ourselves where we're feeling discomfort with love and compassion, or noticing that it comes from love and compassion and inviting it to return to love and compassion. And it can then help us shift into viewing the world that way.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I feel like the life that we lead are the lessons that we teach, right? Because we can kind of go throughout our days and we can react or respond in certain situations. And how we respond to things and we learn from our situations, we can actually teach that in a sense. So I think it's important to be mindful of where we're coming from because if we live in a state of reaction, we're not really going to learn from our experience in a sense. And we can't really be of service. And if we actually become aware of these things and improve upon our responses and our internal state, it is kind of a process of growth and becomes this virtuous circle.
Yeah, it's the most beautiful process that we can experience in our lives, because there's several things guaranteed in this human experience: birth, death. Those are the two main ones. And then in between birth and death is going to be a myriad of choices. And some of us will be fortunate enough to learn that we are powerful choice makers early on. Some of us might not learn it until 2 weeks before we pass. But ultimately, that is the big lesson, in my opinion, is that we learn that we are choice makers, and that we get to choose how to deal with what we've experienced so far and what we want to experience moving forward. So your example of standing in the cold shower is like a microcosm of the macrocosm of what life is. Um, and and so what are you I mean, as cliche as this is, it's not cliche. I love this saying, but what are you going to do with this one wonderful life that you have? And how are you going to show up in the world, and for yourself first, and then for the rest of humanity?
Awesome. Lastly, I would like for you to mention how this all plays into chronic illness. Like what do you see when people start to take on these things and start to regulate the nervous system? Like they start to heal faster? Do they recover from these chronic diseases? Like what do you see personally?
Wow. So it's been pretty miraculous what I have seen when people start to work with their nervous system. If you've been dealing with something chronic and it's lasting longer than 6 months to a year, or you're into a year, 3, 5, 10, 20, I can pretty much guarantee you that there is a nervous system regulation component going on. Even if you were to never fully heal from whatever it is you're experiencing, if you were to learn to regulate your nervous system and heal those deeper parts of yourself, you will have a much better quality of life. Um, I've seen people, myself, so be healed of chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I no longer have Hashimoto symptoms like I did before. Um, chronic, gosh. digestion issues in the sense of being allergic to pretty much everything on the planet. Um, I've seen people heal from POTS. So I'm going to start saying some things that maybe people aren't fully familiar with, but um, I've seen people heal from just pretty much any sort of mysterious chronic illness that you can think of on the planet, as well as those that are very known. I shouldn't, that's a very big blanket statement, but I have come across people in the training programs that I've experienced and done, and also helped people with that have had dramatic shifts in their life um, with nervous system regulation and brain retraining.
Yeah, this makes sense. When you actually get to the root of the problem, which is stress, you're going to see these miracles take place, which is what you seem to have seen. So,
Absolutely. And don't discount it. I mean, it took me 12 years before or between I mean, it's the timeline is started in my late 20s. I feel like I was fully healed in my early 40s. So yeah, I mean, it was much longer than a decade. But this is the nervous system regulation brain retraining was the number one needle changer. It just and then everything else cascaded from there. I almost wish it was like step number one for people.
yeah,
In fact, I think it should be step number one in schools. I think kids, and they're starting to, but kids should learn right away how their brains work, what neuroplasticity is, how powerful they are, um, that they are not, they're not these random racing thoughts that kids, if we can empower children from an early age about what is possible for them and how they can become masters instead of servants to a conditioned brain. Um, yeah, that would I think we'd see a lot less disease and definitely a lot less suffering.
yeah, it takes time, but it's definitely possible. All right, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on the show today, sharing your story, all your amazing insights with us, and how we can actually become more regulated throughout our lives, like through breath work, meditation, being mindful of certain situations throughout the day, and aligned yoga. I really appreciate you sharing that because that's a really powerful tool that people can incorporate in their lives today and just kind of own the practice. Because I find like with all these tools, it's a practice in of itself. We become more skilled at these practices and we just become better. And as I
Mhm.
said, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And you create that forward momentum every single day. So I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing all your insights with us. It's been a blessing.
Thanks, Anthony. It's been a real honor for me.
So if people want to get connected with you and all your work, where can we go?
There's two different places that you can connect with me. ThriveYogaOC.com is my brick and mortar site. If you wanted to take a class with me, you can sign up. We offer a free class to each person their first time through. If you're on the other side of the planet or in a different time zone, it doesn't matter. You can live stream in or receive the recording. So it's open for everybody to participate in. Um, if you want to connect with me on nervous system regulation or the alignment based yoga teacher training program, and my other offerings, then Yoga Oak University is where you would find information on that, yogaoakuniversity.com.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.